There we go. So welcome everyone to class 31 of the Biblical Foundation, which is Genesis, the book of beginnings and one of the most incredible books, a foundational book for all of the Bible. So we're reviewing the post-garden economy, including spirits which kept not their first estate. So let's dive right in. We're going to review some of the things that we looked at last time, and so that they can make it on to the new recording. And so, Lucas, can you please recite Genesis 6:1 in English, please?
And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them.
Very nice. It's multiply.
Multiply.
Yeah, very good. Let me try that in Portuguese. E aconteceu que, como os homens começaram a multiplicar-se sobre a face da terra, e eles nasceram filhas. Oh, so Pedro, can you please read question 1 in English?
What kind of growth in population was there, and why?
Okay, so what do you think? Fast growth, slow growth, medium growth?
Fast.
Absolutely. And why was it fast?
Because the people lived so more.
Exactly. They had longer lives. So remember, Adam, I think, lived to 936 years. And that means Adam potentially had what? He only had 2-3 children, like most people today? No. He could have 800 children. So one father, 800 children, that is growing very, very quickly. And then each of those children can have 800 children. Okay, so each generation is huge increase. Okay, so Lucas, can you please read Genesis 6:2 in English?
That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose.
Very good. And that's very good. You said chose because it's past tense and not choose, which is present tense. So very well done. Let me see if I can say that in Portuguese. Viram os filhos de Deus que as filhas dos homens eram formosas e tomaram para si mulheres de todas as que escolheram. Ouch. Okay, Pedro, can you read question 2, please, in English?
Who are the sons of God, do you think, and why?
Are they just other people? Are they just like, are there other Adams and Eves on Earth?
No.
No. And so who are they, you think?
Maybe angels.
Exactly. We definitely think they're angels, because in the Old Testament, the word sons of God almost always refer to angels. That always refers to angels. So if you think of it, who is directly created by God? Adam was directly created, right? So God took the dust and he created Adam, and God also created all the angels in heaven. So they are directly sons of God. Now in the New Testament, we are called children of God, but that's because are we directly created by God? We're spiritual, his spiritual children. Okay, so that's why we say we're children of God. Okay, but we come from human parents. Okay, so we're directly created by our mother and father. Okay, so sons of God definitely mean angels. And this is important. I remember a pastor in Portas Abertas who actually believed the sons of God were other humans in other gardens, and that's how Seth and Cain had children that with, or how they married with people who were not their sisters, because that pastor didn't want to think that Cain and Seth could marry with a sister. So he said, no, the sons of God, it's like another tribe. No, very important. That's a big mistake, I think. So it's very important that we're talking about angels and specifically fallen angels. So Lucas, can you read question 3, please?
Thus took them wives, mean they married before God.
Very good. Married.
Married.
Very good. Okay, what do you think? Took them wives. This is like in a church before God.
I'm confused.
You think no? You're confused.
I'm confused.
By what? What part?
I didn't understand the question very well. Before
Understood.
God.
Yeah. Okay, before God. That's a good
It
question.
means
Yeah.
God was king. It means God was king.
Yeah.
It means God was king, or it means that they married by God blessing.
Yeah, and that's a good question. So before God, it clearly can mean in terms of time, you before you go to church, you get in the car. That's a use of before as a before in time. There's also a before in space. Okay, so in front of. And that's the sense here. It's when I ask before God is, did they marry like in a church in front of God? No. Okay, so there were no churches, and what they were doing is something God hated. Okay, so these were not biblical or godly marriages. Okay, they were the opposite. This was adultery on steroids. Okay, it was awful. Go ahead, Pedro. What are you going to say?
I understand now.
Okay, good. Thank you. So this is like they took them wives is like a euphemism. And a euphemism is when you put in prettier words something that's ugly. And so the Bible doesn't use ugly words to describe relations between men and women. It doesn't use ugly words. So we look at that and say, oh, okay, took them wives, but that's not it's a euphemism for like they grabbed every woman they wanted to. Ouch. Okay, so Pedro, can you read question 4?
How many fallen sons of God were there?
Okay, do you remember from last class? How many? We don't have a number, but we have a percentage.
Third.
Absolutely right. Okay, very good. And where do we know that from?
Because there's other parts of the Bible that says that is written it, and we can understand
You're absolutely right. In fact, that other part of the Bible is in the next verse. So, Lucas, can you read the mystery verse or book, mystery book, chapter 12, verse 4, please?
And his tail grew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born.
Very good. Two slight, two pronunciations, subtle suggestions. So it's earth, and did cast them to the earth, and devour her child. Isn't that a good verb? Devour sounds like the mouth, devour, rah. Okay, so let me try this in Portuguese. E a sua cauda levou após si a terça parte das estrelas do céu, e lançou-as sobre a terra, e o dragão parou diante da mulher que havia de dar à luz, para que, dando ela à luz, lhe tragasse o filho. All right. And so what book do you think this is?
Revelations.
Absolutely right. Okay, Lucas, you're very good in knowing your Bible books. Good work. Okay, so there it is. So that his tail, so this is the serpents, the dragons, it's the Satan's tail, brought a third part of the stars of heaven. And the stars of heaven in the New Testament is almost always angels. So great. Okay, next question is now Pedro. Can you read question 5 in English, please?
Does take all which they chose imply one wife only?
Okay, what do you think?
I think so. Many and many wives.
Yes. Okay, so all which they chose means they didn't just choose one. Every one they wanted, they took as a wife, okay, meaning that they procreated, and so let's read the next one. So that was Luke. So Pedro, can you read question 6, please?
How many likely such unions occurred?
Okay, so again, a few, oh, a fair amount or a lot?
A lot. A
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
unions.
I agree. Because remember, how many angels are there? Do we know how many angels there are? No, but they're multitudes. There are many, many angels. So I don't know, millions of angels. Let's say 3 million angels. 1/3, 1 million angels fallen angels came down to earth. And essentially, they took every woman they chose. You can almost say that then they chose all earthly women. Almost all. Right? If they chose, they're like, hey, all right, what's to stop them? And so potentially there were many, many, many such unions. So Lucas, can you read question 7, please, in English?
Do angels appear on earth with physical bodies elsewhere in the Bible?
Very good, well pronounced. So what do you think? Do angels, so are these just spirits? who come down and they're not in bodies, or do they have physical bodies?
They had physical bodies.
I agree. All right. And are there angels who are clearly in physical bodies elsewhere in the Bible?
In the history of Abraham,
Uh-huh.
of Lot.
Absolutely. Excellent. Two excellent examples. And so, in fact, let's go to the next verse. And so that's you, Pedro. If you can read the mystery book, chapter 18, verses 2 and 5, please.
And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself towards the ground. And I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort your hearts. After that it shall pass on, for therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, so do, as thou hast said.
Beautiful. Okay, let me try that in Portuguese. E levantou os seus olhos e olhou, e eis 3 homens em pé junto a ele. E vendo-os, correu da porta da tenda ao seu encontro e inclinou-se à terra. E trarei bocado de pão para que esforceis ao vosso coração. Depois passareis adiante, porque por isso chegastes até vosso servo. E disseram, assim faze como disseste. So, who is the he in the very first words? And he lifted up his eyes and looked.
Abraham.
Absolutely right. Okay, so this is obviously a book in Genesis. So it's Genesis 18. And so 3 men stood by him, and he bowed himself to the ground and he offered them food and they accepted the food. So those angels, and one we believe was the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ. So 2 angels and Jesus, pre-incarnate Jesus, ate bread. Okay, so Lucas, can you please read question 8 in English?
Stepping back, what might have been Satan's goal in these unions?
Okay, it's Satan's, so the A is a little more open, Satan's, and then the emphasis on unions, not unions, unions. Okay, very good. So what do you think to answer? So what do you think Satan's goal was in this? So his tail is an image. He brought down 1/3 of all angels. They all became fallen angels, and they all went to find earth women to mate with. And so what do you think Satan's goal was in all of this?
I don't know.
Okay, so this is just a guess because the Bible doesn't explain everything, right? We have to use our logic. We have to think together. We have to remember Isaiah 1:18 is, Lord, let's reason together, Lord. Let's reason together. So that's God. That's actually God speaking to Isaiah saying, let's reason together. God wants us to reason to think through the Bible with him. All right. And we have the Holy Spirit in our midst. And so he's helping us. And so one interpretation is that then Satan wanted to corrupt all flesh. Okay, and so let's read the next question, because that gets to, well, why would he want to corrupt all flesh? So Pedro, can you read question 9, please?
What is the problem with man-angel unions?
Okay, so what do you think? Hey, it's, man and angel together. That's like a powerful man. What's the wrong with that?
I don't know.
Okay, so maybe what sounds like a superhero, right, in today's Hollywood movies is not a good idea. And maybe the risk is, what do you think when you cross a horse with a mule, is that right? Do you get a horse?
Yes.
No, you get something else. It becomes a donkey. Okay, so see, these are horse, mule, donkey. Okay, so you cross two different animals and it creates a new kind of animal.
Okay.
And so if you marry a human with an angel, it's no longer an angel and it's no longer a human. And maybe that's the problem. Okay, the problem is no longer 100% human. Okay, that might be a big problem. Okay, so Lucas, can you read question 10? We're going to explore that question of like why that could be a very bad idea. Question 10, please.
How could that change God's plan of salvation for man?
Very well pronounced. Okay, so remember, so Satan is always trying to disrupt, to change what God wants for us. And so how can this, so no longer 100% man, why would Satan be interested in turning men into half men, half angels? And how does that impact our salvation? Okay.
Or be man and angel.
Yeah.
Of man of angel. And it changed the salvation.
And why?
Because to have salvation, it has to be all of men.
Absolutely right. Excellent response, Pedro. As I wrote in the chat, no longer eligible for salvation. Okay, so only 100% man can receive Jesus's blood. Jesus's blood is human blood. It's not human angel blood. It's human blood. And so his blood only covers humans. Anywhere in the Bible do you hear of a fallen angel being saved or redeemed?
No.
No. Okay. Because Jesus' blood does not cover any angel sin. So once an angel falls, that's it. There's no return. But then let's look why we think this. And the next verse is a good one. Pedro, can you read Leviticus 25:25, please? One of my favorite Old Testament verses.
If thy brother be waxen poor, and hath sold away some of his possession, and if any of his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold.
Okay, very good. Let me try that in Portuguese. Quando teu irmão empobrecer e vender alguma parte da sua possessão, então virá o seu resgatador, seu parente, e resgatará o que vendeu seu irmão. Okay, and next question, Lucas, can you read question 11, please?
What is the name of law introduced in this verse?
Very good. And introduced. All right, because that C alone is then a soft C. If it was CK, then it would be introduced. But there's no K, no T, so the C is soft, so it's introduced. Okay, so what do you think? You remember the name of the law? It's not directly in the Bible, so I'm just going to share it. It's kinsman redeemer. So do you know what a kinsman is? It says here, any of his kin come close to redeem it. So that's family. And it's talking here about close and then redeeming. So can only redeem close kin, kinsman redeemer. All right, the next question is good. Pedro, can you read question 12, please?
What is the most famous example of this law in action in the Bible?
Okay, the most famous example of this law in action in the Bible. Do you remember? There's a beautiful example in a certain book.
Remember?
All right, hey, that's right. Lucas is very good with knowing which book am I talking about. There's a famous example where someone redeems, recuperates, helps greatly a close relative in trouble. In this case, no longer married because the spouse died. What book is that, Lucas? Do you remember?
You remember the book? No.
Okay, it's a tough one. Do you know, Pedro?
Yes, this is the book of Ruth.
Absolutely right. So this is Boaz and Ruth. Okay. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful story in that book. Okay, so Lucas, can you read question 13, please, in English?
What is the risk of transhumanism?
Two more words?
For cyborgs?
Okay, very good. And you did exactly right. When it's a long word, just cut it up. So transhumanism. Okay, and you know what a cyborg is, right? It's like part man, part machine, part technology. And transhumanism is the idea that humans are going to evolve into something else, perhaps with artificial intelligence. So what's the risk for transhumanism and for cyborgs? Sounds like fun. Hey, what's the problem with, taking advantage of technology and putting it in your body?
It can interfere in the DNA.
Exactly right. So the risk is what we've been talking about. No longer 100% human. Okay, so, and that means, hey, no longer 100% human. I don't know if Jesus's blood can serve as the kinsman's redeemer to cover sin of someone who is not 100% human. Okay, so wow. So Pedro, can you read 14, please?
Where might all of this become present in the book of Revelation?
Okay, so where is there the where in the book of Revelation does it mention there's a sin that has no return?
The mark of the beast.
Exactly right. So this is just speculation, but perhaps mark of the beast is something that changes one into not 100% human. Okay, so Lucas, can you read Genesis 6:3, please, in English?
And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years.
Okay, thank you. Very well pronounced. Let me try that in Portuguese. Então disse o Senhor, não contenderá o meu espírito para sempre como o homem, porque ele também é carne. Porém, os seus dias serão 120 anos. So, Pedro, can you read question 15, please?
While God is long-suffering, this verse implies he must someday exact what?
Okay. So, while God is long-suffering, meaning he's patient with us, right? Long-suffering, suffers a long time, like, he loves us and he hates to see us sinning. So he's long-suffering. This verse implies he must someday exact. And what's exact? Exact is like inflict. Exact something, inflict something. And what is that?
The bringing of the judgment.
Exactly right. Exactly right, Pedro. Very good Bible scholar. So it's implying judgment. My spirit shall not always strive with men. His patience lasts so long, and then will come a point. All right. No more time. The time runs out. So let's look now at a few more verses because we're coming close to the end of class. So we're going to continue the study of the pre-flood economy. And to do that, let's go to a new verse. And so, Lucas, can you read Genesis 6:4, please, in English?
There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same come might men which were of old, men of renown.
Very good. So remember, it's earth. So earth. And then there's the word before children is bear. And I think you said a little closer to bar. And remember, when there's an E, a silent E, so B-A-R-E, the silent E means the vowel before that on the other side of a consonant. In this case, the R is open. So it's bear, not bar. So the silent E leads you to pronounce it with an open A. So bear, children. All right, so very good. Let me try that in Portuguese. Havia naqueles dias gigantes na terra, e também depois, quando os filhos de Deus entraram as filhas dos homens, e delas geraram filhos. Estes eram os valentes que houve na antiguidade, os homens de fama. So, and you can tell here, the Bible is gentle. It spoke in euphemism at first to take them wives, and now it gives us, it's being a little more direct. All right, so they came into the daughters of men, and they bear children to them. Okay, so it's making it a little clearer what it was talking about at first. And so, Pedro, can you read question A, please?
So what are the products of these unions?
Okay, so what does the verse tell us? These unions created what?
Giants.
Yes. What other name does it give them?
I don't know.
Look at the last verse or the last phrase. And the same became
Became mighty men.
exactly. So giants, mighty men, and also men of renown. Okay, and men of renown, as you probably could tell from the Portuguese, it's famous. So famous men. Okay, so these are giants, they're mighty. Mighty is like very strong men, and they became famous. Who's the most famous giant in the Bible?
Goliath.
Exactly. In English, Goliath.
Goliath.
Okay, Goliath. Exactly right. So he's famous. He's very tall, and he's very strong. Excuse me. So, Lucas, please read the last question in English, question B.
What does in those days and also after that signify?
Signify.
Signify.
Yeah, good. So remember, when there's a Y at the end of the word, it's always pronounced like an open I. Okay, so you can think of like fly. And so when there's a Y, it always has it's a sound like an open I. Fly, signify, modify. Okay. So in those days, what does in those days and also after that signify? So what days is he talking about?
The days of the time of Noah.
Exactly right. And what part of the time of Noah? There's a big event that's going to come shortly.
I think that it became before
The what?
the time of Noah.
Well, there's Noah all this time, but I'm saying there's a big event, and Noah is famous for surviving that event. And what is that event called?
The flood.
Absolutely right. Okay, so it's the flood of Noah.
Flood.
Okay, is what they call it. When clearly it's God's flood, his punishment, his judgment on all the earth. And so this verse is saying, so in those days, so we can say, so in prior to the flood, or you can say, remember that word that has two different, it can be before the flood, because before in time, before the flood. So that makes sense. You exactly said right. In those days, so prior to the flood. But then what does and also after that mean? After what?
After, I think after it began.
Okay. Well, but what do you think? So remember, what's the big event? What's the name of the big event?
Flood.
Right. So Noah's flood. And if it's saying in those days, and that's prior to the flood, then when they say and also after that is at the beginning of the flood? No, it's after the flood. Okay. And why is that? Sorry, go ahead.
And then it means that also before the flood, it had bad in the world.
It had what the world? I didn't understand the verb you used.
The the sin
Sin,
in the world.
Yep. Okay, but here, remember, what is he talking about here? Let's go back to the verse. And there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. So he's talking about giants.
Okay.
Okay, so let's look at that again. So it's saying prior to the flood. No, well, no, you know what? I'm wrong. In those days, so it's the days. Well, yes, in those days when the sons of man came into the daughters of man and created giants. So there were giants before the flood. All right, so yes, that makes sense. There were giants in the earth in those days before the flood and also after that. And so it's a very interesting phrase. It's a parenthetical phrase. And what does it mean? What happened?
I don't know.
Well, the giants return. Okay, so that's what it implies. So remember, we've been talking about how many giants on earth, how many man-angel unions occurred and bear children. And we think maybe millions, maybe most, maybe all, not all, but almost all women on earth mated with the angels. The angels could choose anyone they wished many times. And so perhaps the whole world was filled with people who were giants. And so that what we're getting at is that the Bible doesn't say this, but maybe that was one reason for the flood. All right, it's not just because there were so many sinful people, and they were many, many sinful people, but they were giants. And so God said, we have to clean them out. Okay, and we'll talk about this next class, but why is it important that there not be corrupted blood? There not be half man, half giant people everywhere. Can Jesus Christ be born to a half man, half giant? No, right? Jesus Christ so needed to be born from Mary and Joseph, 100% human Mary and Joseph. Okay, so God had to clean the earth, and he found, and we'll read this verse next class, he found a man, Noah, who was perfect in his generations. And the implication is Noah, 100% human. And his sons were 100% human, and his daughter-in-laws, we think, must have been 100% human. Okay, so Noah's Ark was to preserve the human race that was 100% human. And that's good. The earth needed that. That needed that cleaning. But then then we have this phrase, and also after that, and we go, oh no, right? The giants returned. And we'll discuss this next class, but how do we know that the giants returned?
By the history of David and Goliath.
Exactly right. That's just the most famous example. So Goliath is a giant, and that comes later. Okay, and do you remember when the Jews, they leave Egypt, and they finally, after the 40 years in the desert, after their sin, they come to the promised land. And what do the spies, Joshua and Caleb, are the only ones? And what do their spies, the advanced Jews who go to Canaan, what do they find and report?
Giants.
Exactly. All right. So only Joshua and Caleb were courageous. The other Jews were, we can't do this. Canaan is filled with giants. They're mighty men, and we're too small. So they lacked faith, and only Joshua and Caleb. And I mixed the order. So the Jews went first, the spies, and only Joshua and Caleb had faith that the Lord could make them win any battle against any giant. All the other adults were then they were punished by 40 years in the desert, and that they would never enter the promised land. Okay, so only Moses, Joshua, and Caleb were the adults. And Moses didn't make it. He just came to the border, right? So only Joshua and Caleb entered, and the others, they didn't, because they had no faith and they were too afraid of all the giants in Canaan. So, all right, so excellent class. Any questions before we in English before we end the recording?
No.
Oh.
Okay. All right, excellent Bible scholars, and see the rest of you next week, the Lord willing.